trade recap, and today I actually broke the losing streak here with a win, and it was at 124.2 or almost 3. So I wiped out 4 losses with this trade, which was very much needed. So currently I'm only down with the losing streak like 1%, a little bit less, but approximately 1%, which is very nice. And let me go over the trade here. We can see that we are in the making of this weekly for value gap, which I'm expected to be created, even though we yesterday had this huge expansion lower. That was Thursday, so this was the week's major move. Then today, during Friday, this is also the third candle of that daily for value gap creation, so it is a little bit lower probability, yes. But since we did not really have a lot of movement until Thursday, my thought process was that there's still a little bit of volatility left in the tank, especially since we do also have high impact US dollar news later during New York session. But here I was expecting a thank God it's Friday setup, where we sweep Thursday's low in this case to then come back up in the week's range. So what could we see here on the 4 hour first? We can see that we had this 4 hour for value gap, very small. This was also the previous day low. But we had this 4 hour value gap. We already disrespected that before we actually came into London session. But here on the 1 hour we had a very interesting narrative, which also cleared up a lot of resistance. But we could see that after we came down, we swept the previous day low here, had this 1 hour for value gap higher. After we have already mitigated the 4 hour for value gap with this candle, but then already traded above that again, no for value gaps here on the lower time frame, or even the 5 minute lower, no 5 minutes for value gap lower, just very uncertain price action at that moment in time. But when we eventually then, during the open, we stung into that for value gap to then give a super clean entry here. We can see that at first, as I mentioned also, we did not have a 5 minute for value gap lower, which indicates that we have not a lot of resistance, and the first resistance would actually be this high, which was the 1 hour last line of defense here for the bearish side. We can see that after we swept that, we did have a huge consolidation for about 40 minutes, 30-40 minutes, somewhere around that time frame. But here, when we came down into this, we respected it first. But since this 1 hour candle here had a huge wick to then sting into that for value gap, we can expect somewhat of a deeper retracement, and that would in this case be the previous candle low sweep on the 15 minutes, and we can see that by this. At the first thing into it, we had this ST, but it was not that clean. It was kind of choppy, uncertain, and we had this long wick here stinging into that 1 minute for value gap. Then we can see here, we're not doing anything here. Then we can see that, okay, we swept that low. Perfect. This 1 hour for value gap is not the boundary anymore, because that has already been mitigated here. But the boundary now is that previous candle low on the 15 minute time frame. And that is a 15 minute PD array, which allows us to go in and look for a 1 minute entry. So that's exactly what I did. When I saw that we then slowly started to disrespect these, this was the major sign that made me want to enter. We disrespected this 1 minute for value gap bearish, and also this order block here, these order blocks overlapping with the for value gap. We disrespect those, and we instead start to displace higher. that was my indication that okay, I want to enter. Then we had this 1 minute fair value gap right here created, which my entry was originally on this breaker here, and my fill was a little bit above. So then to cover here why there, I thought that would be a good place. I don't think price would come all the way just to stop just before taking out that low to then continue higher. I figured that since this was already fair value, price would not retrace a lot further than to this point. And we can see actually to the pip we stung into that breaker to then continue higher. So that was the thought process behind that as well. And yeah, perfect entry here, sticking to it. A lot of consolidation. We reached that high, the 1 hour opposing last line of defense, and we gave a rejection, which was expected. Eventually, after the major consolidation here, we decided to continue higher, and then when all the resistance here was over, we just exploded higher. So a very nice trade in my opinion. Finally breaking the losing streak as well. And actually I had a different approach here on the risk management, because I recognized that price still had reasons to come down below. So I did not actually go break even until we had this 5 minute fair value gap higher here. So when this 5 minute fair value gap was created, that was when I decided to go break even. Simply because when we had this consolidation, on the 1 minute we can see we created a lot of liquidity here. So at first I was expecting price to just come up into my drawdown area to sweep out all those lows, also tap into a 5 minute order block, which was this area, to then continue higher. But it never ended up happening, and we just continued higher instead. Overall, yeah, losing streak is finally over. Now I just have to keep this up, and yeah, trade recap done.